This is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Oh, sorry. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barton. Today, we're going to be talking about Oregon extending. They had like ditched some standards for like reading and writing other stuff like that, and so they decided to extend, I guess, the pause on that stuff, and for the purpose of equity, because it's I don't know, having standards and expectations is apparently hurting minority students. And this isn't the first time we've seen something like this, and it's disgusting. And I want to say my piece about it. Also, we're going to be talking about Mark Meadows. It was reported that some time ago, I guess he had given, in exchange for immunity, a testimony regarding some stuff about Trump and the election. And according to him, people told Trump that that basically that there wasn't any evidence that had really come to light that could overturn the election, though he wrote other stuff in his book that seems to contradict that. But he claimed that he'd never heard Trump say himself that he lost, or that he accepted that he lost. So I'm still expecting like plenty of people to say, hey, we gave him all this information, but as far as what Trump believed or didn't believe or whatever, only I don't know what evidence that they can produce of him actually believing that he legitimately lost the election, whether he accepted it or not. So it'll be interesting to see what else happens. But Trump did have some words, so I'll share what his thoughts were. And also, there is a big conversation going on the internet right now, because there was a rapper had asked, like, where do women want to go on the first date, and or not, where do you not want to go? And the Breakfast Club talked about it. So a lot of people are talking about this list, and I want to talk about it today because some of the things on the list are a bit silly to me. So I just wanted to get my thoughts out there and see what you guys have to think about that. So not a very heavy show today, as opposed to like the past couple of shows. So a little lighter on our feet today, I suppose. But before we jump into it, I'm going to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, cost stream and run my website, all that stuff, so you guys can support in that way. I very much do appreciate it. Appreciate you. You guys can give on Facebook with stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can do super chats and super thanks. So thank you for those of you who do that. But the best way to give, you guys can go directly to the website. There's a link in the description. Check out different merchandise that we have available at the store to pick up. So if you go to merchandise, you'll see all these different things. Also, check out different books that I have available for purchase. If you search my name on Amazon, Christina L. Barr, you'll find that I have 17 books available. 2 are nonfiction, the rest are fiction. And if you go to blacktnews.com, though, on the merchandise page, there's a banner that will take you to my book website. So if you go right to the website, it's the easy way to find all the stuff that you might be interested in revolving around me and what I've produced and put out there. So let's jump into it. I don't have a funny to really break down and go into, but I'm going to start off with this Oregon story. So first, right off the bat, I just want to point out that Frederick Douglass, who I quote often and enjoy his wisdom, and I think so many people can learn from him and his examples, and what he wrote about life, despite the circumstances that he obviously had to go through. One of the reasons why I made this shirt, Be Better, Not Bitter. Let me just find that and pull that up, that he's on there. because so many people take past grievances and they just want to perpetually run with it forever, let that define them, even things that people they themselves have not gone through. And so, really fascinating quote from him. Everybody has asked the question, what shall we do with the Negro? I have but one answer from the beginning: do nothing with us. Your doing with us has already played the mischief with us. Do nothing with us. If the apples will not remain on the tree of their own strength, if they are worm eaten at the core, they are early ripe and disposed to fall. Let them fall. I am not for the for the tying or fastening of them on the tree in any way except by nature's plan. And if they will not stay there, let them fall. And if the Negro cannot stand on his own legs, let him fall also. All I ask is give him a chance to stand on his own legs. Let him alone. So I brought up that quote because um there are too many people who are so obsessed with race or so obsessed with the disparate impact, the disproportionate results or whatever, and you look at blanket results and you're like, oh, look at these black kids, they're not doing so good, so we got to get rid of the standards. Or, oh, what about all these people in jail here, and there's a lot of people of color here, so maybe we need to, I don't know, get rid of the laws. Or, oh, there's these issues in schools and maybe we need to get rid of these disciplinary actions and make sure stuff doesn't pop up on people's records because we don't want to see all these brown people go to this, prison, uh school to prison pipeline, etc., as opposed to treating people like they're individuals. Looking at, you can look at the different socioeconomic issues that people are in, and try to fix those things. And you can try to break down what choices the individual makes. A lot of times when people talk about systemic racism, people will get upset, who are into CRT and pushing that kind of, verbiage. When people on the right might say, okay, well, you have this example of racism. You say there's all this racism and stuff. It's like, show me an example. And they're like, oh, you guys don't believe. It's like, okay, no, we want your example because then we want to look at the example and see if the disparate impact is really because of racism, or are there other things at work, right? Like, are there a lot of black people getting traffic tickets because, you know, white people hate black people driving? Or is the answer black people are speeding more than everyone else? And by the way, the Obama DOJ, I believe, I think it was Obama DOJ. I don't know if they did the study before they released it, but they came to that conclusion that a lot of more black people were speeding. So in some areas, I know that that cops wait on the border and they're more likely to get somebody who they think is coming in, coming out, who, I guess, because they would rather give tickets to people who not in their communities and stuff. So you that's a whole kind of different thing. But you have to assess and look into it to see, is racism at play or is there other sort of factors at work here? And so in Oregon, they decided to pump the brakes on people having particular standards to graduate. And I think that's trash. Before I play the video, I'm reminded I was on Let It Rip during the pandemic. Those of you who aren't like in the Metro Detroit area, Let It Rip is a new show that comes on late. Well, not super late, but it's like, I don't know, 10 o'clock ish or something. And they'll have on different panelists and we'll debate different things. And so I think I've been on Let It Rip maybe about 3 times. And I watched this recently because my mom had them like 2 of the time still on DVR, which, sweet and stuff. So went back and watched it a bit. And so one of the times I was on was, like I said, during the pandemic. I didn't really like that format too much because when you're with people in the studio, you can engage on the back and forth more. And on the Zoom, it's still like your turn, your turn, your turn, your turn. And there was more things I would have liked to like interject with that particular subject. But um, anyway, one of the panelists is a state rep, I believe. I don't think it was a state senator, I think it was state rep. And he was talking about how schools have their students, black students will be disciplined more, or whatever, or they won't be in honor classes as much. And so I was talking to my older sister about that. And so she mentioned when she was in going to school in Pontiac, that all the kids in the honor classes, um, there was a pretty big difference. Everybody came from like two parent homes, except for like one person who had like lost their dad. And I'm not saying everybody who wasn't in the honor classes didn't have parent fathers in the homes or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. But those kind of metrics do also help when you have two parents, and people, like, I don't know, they get upset when you mention it. I'm not trying to down your single mom or something, but you know, data just bears it out. It's you hit it, having two parents in the home. That doesn't mean your parents are perfect. Doesn't mean you have two good parents, but it's more like hitting the lottery. And a good indication that that you're going to graduate high school, that you're not going to go to prison and all bunch of other kind of things. It's not a permanent roadmap. It's just a data point that you can look at. People still have agency, and you can make your own decisions, obviously. So anyway, she didn't buy into the, like, his perspective was like, oh, they put a lot of, I don't know, there's white kids and stuff in the honors class and less black kids or something, when she observed something else that could be a contributing factor. Like, you can't just jump to it's a racial sort of thing. And I'm like, I've always been in honor classes myself. Now, in a good portion of my siblings also the same. Not everyone was always like, I was a kid who come on Fridays and make sure my homework was done. So I was always a different kind of kid. So this idea that people you got to get rid of standards for the sake of minority kids, it doesn't make any sense, especially because you can see a lot of, like, immigrants will come over and do well. African immigrants, Asian Asians will do well. There's some schools, they'll like look at minority stuff, but they'll put the white kids with the Asians to like rig the results, because they still want to say non-whites are doing worse, but they don't want the Asians to skew the results. And it's really crazy. It's really crazy. But anyway, here's the report.
For the next 5 years, high school students in Oregon will not need to perform proficiency tests showing mastery of reading, writing, or math in order to graduate. And this comes as the Oregon Board of Education unanimously voted to extend a pause on the graduation requirement yesterday until 2028. They're citing inefficiency and inequity. Joelle Jones going beyond the headlines tonight to find out what this pause will mean for students.
This is a controversial decision, and one that's facing a lot of pushback. While some say the decision will lower state standards and cheapen an Oregon diploma, the Oregon Department of Education tells me this policy simply didn't work and disproportionately harmed students of color.
Disproportionately harms students of color. And now, when you say stuff like that, as opposed to looking at the other sort of reasons why that could be, it kind of gives the impression that you think do you think black people are just genetically dumber or something? Like, that Hispanic kids are genetically just dumber, like they can't succeed in those sorts of ways and need this, and not just a handicap, because they're not giving a handicap. They're just saying, let's just scrap it. And so by you trying to even the playing field with the minorities, you're creating this, well now there's not this standard for the white kids. Or I don't know if they're counting the Asians or not too, but we'll just say the white kids for now. And now, since they don't have that bar to cross over, you're gonna mess up a lot of other kids who sometimes don't really care that much about high school. They do what they can to get by. And they don't prioritize it as much as they can. Sometimes people need that added pressure of like, oh crap, I'm not gonna graduate, or something, so they can get their act together. I've have a lot of friends in high school who were like, you know, freshman year. One friend, I would just like kind of decide to be super lazy, and then they just, decided to flip. Then they had to flip their switch and turn everything on and actually turn their homework and stuff. I don't understand. I don't understand why they kind of had that attitude at first, because they were really smart, really really smart. And I sometimes kids are just like that. They need that little fire under their feet, and they can do well, but they need that they need standards. A lot of people really need pressure, they need standards, and they need someone to lead them, or otherwise people will skate by. Like I liked being at the top. I liked having the good grade. It was my goal to be valedictorian, didn't quite make that. And then I shifted my, aim from the stars, maybe you'll hit the moon or something. So my moon became, at least I want to graduate in the top 10, and I graduated number 9. But they, on graduation day, they listed us in alphabetical order after like the valedictorians and the salutatorians. So people thought in the audience that I was number 4. but I was number 9. And a lot of people, like I said, they just need those standards. So they're not only doing a disservice to the students of color, they're doing a disservice to the white students as well. And it's really insulting. As someone said in the comments, it's really insulting to feel that you need to get rid of them to help the black students or Hispanic students, etc. As Frederick Douglass said, like, if people can't succeed, you just gotta let them fail. You gotta let them fail if they can't succeed. But you don't destroy the entire institution. You don't destroy all the standards, etc. because some people are doing bad. You try to help them. You can try to help them, but you don't just blow everything up because you don't like the result. That's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know how else to put it. There was something else that I saw today that the ACLU put out about this is so insulting, about AIDS, really. I'm sorry, it was HIV. And let me see if I can find it really quick. I know that I think Mike Cernovich was the one who I saw him said something about it. But here we go. Found it. And I don't know if people understand what happens when they write stuff like this. But again, it's just insulting. Okay. Breaking. We're suing Tennessee for their aggravated prostitution statute that targets people with HIV with harsh punishment and lifetime sex offender registration. This law is unconstitutional and disproportionately affects Black and transgender women. Black people are more likely to be prostitutes with HIV, don't you know? I don't. You don't want people to give each other HIV. You don't want people to do that. Well, I don't want people to do that. Um, so I don't think that's something like people are trying really hard to totally remove the stigma with it. Um, I think it should remain pretty serious if you give someone HIV. Um, so there's that, and it has that belief, that opinion of mine, and you can have a different opinion. Has nothing to do with whether or not it's a black person giving you HIV. Nothing to do with that at all, in the least bit. Um, uh, transgender women, so black men who so black prostitutes, black male prostitutes, um they're concerned about black male prostitutes giving HIV, and they really don't want them to be punished for it, I guess. Just stop. Like this incessant need to always mention race to prove your point. Like I saw Ben Shapiro reacted to a comedian talking about abortion, and the comedian was like, "Oh, my friends are so progressive and they'll say something that I just think is crazy." And then they're like, "Oh no, it's so good." And so he's like, he had friends who were like, "Oh yeah, so I'm giving money to help for this organization that helps black people have abortions, black women have abortions." And he's like, "Oh, that sounds really awful." And they're like, "No, we're helping black women have abortions." So he's like, "Yeah, you're helping black people kill your children." And so I don't know what the audience did after that, but Ben, was like, "Yeah, that was like Margaret Sanger's her spiel or whatever." But actually Margaret Sanger, you know, I don't like her at all in the least bit, and she did like plan for like the Negroes to kind of wipe ourselves out. But she wasn't actually as passionate for abortion as like the people who took over Planned Parenthood, like Alan Guttmacher and other folks. So she wanted that more restriction of our population via birth control, rather than like abortion being used to that extent as the birth control. So at least from everything that I've kind of found. So, and it's funny because after Roe v. Wade was overturned, someone was doing like interviews of people out in the streets, and so someone interviewed they didn't know in advance, or allegedly didn't know in advance, that they've stumbled upon Margaret Sanger's like grandson or something, and lo and behold, one of the reasons that he said it was so important to still have abortion was for women of color, so I can have access to that. And I find that to be really alarming. Think about how much money goes into this stuff, the promotion of it, etc. Imagine, um and I talked to someone this past weekend about who lives in Ohio, and I asked them their opinion about like the Ohio abortion legislation that's going to be up on the ballot, and they said they think it's probably going to pass. And he said the money for the pro-abortion side is just outspending them like crazy. Think about all this money that's put into protecting abortion every election, and how much money we give to Planned Parenthood, etc. And you can say, "Oh, it doesn't directly go to that." Like, dude, if they don't have to pay for this thing, they can use the other stuff to, pay to get more people in the building for abortions or whatever. It's fungible, right? So stop with that. um, Imagine if all that money was like invested into just women, you know? education, people talk about sex education. I think that our sex education system is pretty much designed to just normalize sex, not discourage people from having it. And I can get into more on that another day. I suppose I don't want to go totally down that rabbit hole. But what about embryology? Because if people knew just a little bit more about it, and I think people would probably make that decision less. So that's probably a good investment there. People say we'd have less abortions if we had more sex education. Not unless you're educating people on why abortion is bad. It's not. I'm not falling for your tricks. Or what if you helped mothers who were in tight spots, who were concerned about, can they even afford to give the birth? Not just what's going to happen financially after they have the child, you know? Which, by the way, there are pro-life organizations that do that. Like Let Them Live, for an example. There's pregnancy crisis centers, and there's another group that I know the Daily Wire was promoting. So there's organizations that do that. There's more like federal funds and state funds and stuff than I think most people know about. So there are means to help. But imagine if we just kind of focused more on solving the big issue that a lot of women say why they want to have an abortion is, they feel like, it's they can't afford it, etc. Which people say can't afford. That doesn't mean that they're actually like literally destitute or something. So a lot of time it's really to preserve their lifestyles, and people can get by and stuff. But if that was just, if people were more focused on alleviating those burdens rather than pushing and protecting this particular privilege that people see as a right, we could solve a lot. But instead, if you're like, hey, we shouldn't have abortions, you're like, how dare you? Black people need that thing. And it's like, how about Black women need to have their babies? Black people need to keep reproducing. Black women need to love their children. Why don't you help us do that? Why, you know, why that we got to protect this right, and we got to really make sure we protect the mothers being able to kill their babies if they're Black, especially those Black children. And if you want to talk about a disproportionate number, man, in Michigan, at least 56% of the abortions are from Black women, and we're 14% of the population. So that's pretty remarkable. And I bet you if you looked into your state number, you'll probably find a lot of things that are similar. um, disproportionately, man. Disproportionately. And it's funny when people talk about systemic racism. I'm like, if they want to use that saying and that phrase, you know, go ahead and mention the thing that's the most obvious, blatant example in the country: the disproportionate amount of Black babies that are aborted. Especially, there's like a racist origin because it's rooted in eugenics, right? Which isn't exclusively just racial, but there's that element there, and there's still a disparate impact. So if you're going to use that definition, they're clear example. But they don't care about that. They're they think it's good. And apparently, I think you should be able to protect Black male prostitutes who give people HIV, and we should get rid of standards and education. Um, there have been instances where juries, have considered people's race while making decisions and stuff. And there's a video I showed you guys some time ago of a couple who is being harassed. It was a white couple who's being harassed by some crazy Black person. I think it was in New York or something. And maybe it wasn't New York, but they called the police, and the police were going to arrest them. And then the white people just started crying, like, oh my gosh, can't you just like let them go to warning or something? Can't you just make them go somewhere else? It was I think I titled like it the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. And you're not doing anyone any favors by coddling Black people, by infantilizing Black people. Just, if you want to end racism, just stop being racist. You, as an individual, just stop it. Just stop it. You can still have an occasional joke or something, but just stop it. Like, stop this need to see other people like children, like pets, like they have no sense of agency. Just stop it. Like, stop with the it's not just a hateful, spiteful thing that we have to worry about. I think something far worse is this, uh, the low expectation, with the bigotry of soft, low expectations that goes on with this example of Oregon. So just stop it. Just stop it. Treat everyone the same based on their personality, their actions, the content of their character. Like, you can notice that they're Black, you can notice that they're Hispanic, you can notice that they're Asian, you can notice that someone is white. It's their skin. That's just, it's a part of life. It is. But you if they do something bad, that's something that they chose to do as an individual. And if they do something good, you don't have to be all like, "Oh my gosh, you for a Black person, you stop it." Stop it. Just stop it. I've said this many times. People who are obsessed with racism and apparently obsessed with ending it are some of the ones that you really got to watch out for, and are the ones who are making it worse. Just stop it. I don't care that you're upset about the disproportionate amount of Black male prostitutes going to give HIV. I don't think people should be prostituting themselves passing HIV, period. Period. Okay? Anyway, let's move on. So Mark Meadows, there's a report that came out that he had given a testimony about the election and Trump and so on. And Trump said some things. So I'm going to go through this ABC News article really quickly. Former President Donald Trump's final chief of staff in the White House, Mark Meadows, has spoken with special counsel Jack Smith's team at least 3 times this year, including once before a federal grand jury, which came only after Smith granted Meadows immunity to testify under oath, according to sources familiar with the matter. The sources said Meadows informed Smith's team that he repeatedly told Trump in the weeks after the 2020 presidential election that the allegations of significant voting fraud coming to them were baseless, a striking break from Trump's prolific rhetoric during the election. According to the sources, Meadows also told the federal investigators Trump was being dishonest with the public when he first claimed to have won the election only hours after polls closed on November 3rd, 2020, before final results were in. Obviously, we didn't win, a source quoted Mark Meadows as telling Smith's team. In hindsight, Trump has called Meadows, one of the former president's closest and highest ranking aides in the White House, a special friend and a great chief of staff, as good as it gets. The descriptions of what Meadows allegedly told investigators shed further light on the evidence Smith's team has amassed as it prosecutes Trump for allegedly trying to unlawfully retain power and spread lies about the 2020 election. The descriptions also expose how far Trump's loyalists like Meadows have gone to support and defend Trump. Sources told ABC News that Smith's investigators were keenly interested in questioning Meadows about election-related conversations he had with Trump during the final months in office, and whether Meadows actually believes some of the claims he included in a book he published after Trump left office, a book that promised to correct the record on Trump. ABC News has identified several assertions in the book that appear to be contradicted by what Meadows allegedly told investigators behind closed doors. According to Meadows' book, the election was stolen and rigged, and help from allies in the liberal media who ignored actual evidence of fraud, rights there in plain sight for anyone to access and analyze. But as described to ABC News, Meadows privately told Smith's investigators that to this day, he has yet to see any evidence of fraud that would have kept now President Joe Biden from the White House. And he told them he agrees with a government assessment at the time that the 2020 presidential election was the most secure election in U.S. history. Now, I haven't read Meadows' book, but people using the stolen and rigged and allies from the media kind of rhetoric doesn't actually have to contradict the idea that there wasn't enough actual like fraud, like changing of the votes or fake votes or something to like overturn the actual like election results. um Something like rigged, or the allies in the media, liberal media, etc. The suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop, for example, a lot of people talk about how that was unjust, and something that social media sites and work to depress and so on. And there was pressure from like, or heads up from like government entities, like, hey, there's some stuff coming out there, information that that's disinformation coming out there, and they saw that, and the New York Post was blocked from sharing it. Nobody could share it. They couldn't post for a while because it was on there, and the whole thing was true. And people, there was a joint letter of all the like former national security people who came out and said it said all the earmarks of like Russian propaganda, and all that stuff wasn't true. And of course, Biden's team knew that that was actually under his laptop, and people, and the government should have known it was also legitimate because they already had like possession, I believe, of another copy of the laptop. And then there were people who were like, I saw Jack Posobiec, who kept like tweeting at Jake Tapper, like, I have the laptop, like a copy. Do you want to see it? So they didn't want to know. They just like let the lie kind of sit out there because they didn't want to derail Joe Biden. So that's a pretty big example of some pretty big entities trying to shift the election in a particular way. Um, does that mean that enough people would have changed their vote if they had access to that information? There have been some polls that suggest that people would have changed their minds, but I mean, I don't know about that. Like in Michigan, I don't know that that would have changed enough people's minds, or even if they didn't suppress it on social media, if the media still chose not to cover it or whatever, how does that information get out there? And is it enough if people hate Donald Trump and are so in their heads that like he's literally killing people because of how he's acting with COVID, and they didn't feel he was responsible enough or whatever? Are they going to have their minds change because of Hunter Biden's laptop? So, you know, I anyway, I don't know exactly what's in his book or what he said was rigged or not, but the claims that he's making in his book don't necessarily have to conflict with in real time, maybe saying, hey, this stuff isn't really panning out that we're getting. Like I remember after the election, um I there was so much stuff that went on. My dad was in the hospital. We had a funeral not too long after that. And my not my dad, but it was just a lot of things going on. It seemed like everybody like outside of my family was so focused on the election stuff, and I'm like, there's more to life going on right now. But I made a phone call while I was over my uncle's house, and like in the middle of like preparing for the funeral stuff. And I called somebody who was like in the GOP, and I was like, is this stuff really legit, or are people trying to fundraise off this? I'm like, just be honest with me. Like, are people really challenging this, or is this a scheme to raise money? And they said that they are looking into the stuff, And but most of the claims that they were getting at that time was not legit, like people calling in about their pins and other stuff like that. So that was early on. Other stuff, concerns and other things came out after that. But I guarded my heart on that issue because I do know how campaigns and people work. That a lot of this stuff is about making a buck, and they did raise a lot of money off of election integrity. Which, by the way, there was actually no election integrity fund that didn't exist. So they split that money between like Save America and like the RNC. Save America is a Trump pack, but yeah. Anyway, um, as described to ABC News, Meadows privately told Smith's investigations that to this day, he has yet to see evidence of fraud that would have kept the now President Joe Biden from the White House. And he told them he agrees with the government assessment at the time that the 2020 presidential election was the most secure election in U.S. history. I don't believe that. I guess not the most secure in history. I don't know what your comparison is. That just sounds like a line. I'm not saying that, alleging that's not legit or something, but I hate that line, that just the repeat uh verbal vomit of this most secure in history. Okay. Okay, sure. At that point, I think you're overselling it. So I don't like when people say that. Under the immunity order from Smith's team, the information Meadows provided to the grand jury earlier this year can't be used against him in federal prosecution. The immunity came after a lawyer for Meadows requested that his client be immunized to testify before the grand jury, sources familiar with the matter said. A senior Justice Department official signed off on the request, and an immunity order was then issued by U.S. District Court Judge James Boasberg, the chief judge at the federal court in Washington, D.C., days before Meadows appeared before the grand jury in March, sources said. Had Meadows not been granted immunity, prosecutors expected him to invoke the Fifth Amendment rights against self incrimination, sources said. Trump was already questioning the integrity of the election months before Election Day. Then, within hours of the polls closing on November 3rd, as Trump was beginning to lose key states, Trump claimed on national TV that it was all major fraud. Frankly, we did win this election, Trump declared. Meadows told investigators earlier this year that he's losing that his long I'm sorry, that his long believed Trump was being dishonest when he made that statement, giving the fact that votes were still being counted and the results from several states were not in yet. Nevertheless, public testimony has shown that in the weeks after the election, Meadows helped Trump vet allegations of fraud that were making their way to Trump from people like Rudy Giuliani, whom Trump put in charge of legal efforts to keep Trump in the White House. But Meadows said that by mid-December, he privately informed Trump that Giuliani hadn't produced any evidence to back up the many allegations he was making, sources said. Then Attorney General Bill Barr also informed Trump and Meadows in the Oval Office meeting the allegations of election fraud were not panning out, as Barr recounted in testimony to Congress last year. Meadows has said publicly that he believed a number of allegations still warranted further investigation and that he hadn't reached a conclusion on the election overall by late December. Also, by then, Trump had run out of legal options when the U.S. Supreme Court on December 11th, 2020, denied his final court challenge. Trump told Meadows something to the effect of, "Then that's the end," or "So that's it." Meadows recalled to investigators, according to sources. Still, Trump went back down, investigator insisting that there was widespread fraud, but that the Justice Department wasn't looking for it, Barr recalled. So there's a little bit more, but you get the gist of what's going on. So I wonder what this if he's cooperating with that particular case. Is he going to be another one who like takes a plea deal with the RICO case and stuff? I think he was also charged in that as well, but all the lawyers I think involved you have already like flipped. So I just I don't think I got to that part in the article yet, but Meadows did say that he did not hear or was aware of Trump himself saying that he knew that he lost the election. So I think a lot has to really hinge upon him knowingly believing that he knowing that he lost, believing he lost, but still trying to defraud people anyway. And I don't know if that proof is out there. I don't also think that it might end up mattering to the jury depending on where he's prosecuted. Like in this case, like it's a DC court. Like it's not gonna be good for him, guys. But Trump did weigh in there. So he did have something to say this morning. Well, I don't know if it was this morning or last night, but so let me go ahead and read that for you guys. But I think, and I pressed this yesterday, I think he should lay off talking about a lot of these things. I know he likes to not really tweet anymore, but I know he likes to write about these things on social media. But I don't think they help his case. And I think that he needs to focus on not going to jail, and just control his mouth a bit, because I think things like this particularly don't help. He said, don't think Mark Meadows would lie about the rigged and stolen 2020 presidential election merely for getting immunity, in all caps, against persecution by deranged prosecutor Jack Smith. But when you really think about it, after being hounded like a dog for 3 years, told you'll be going to jail for the rest of your life, your money and your family will be forever gone, and we're not at all interested in exposing those that did the rigging. If you say bad things about that terrible monster Donald J. Trump, we won't put you in prison. You can keep your family and your wealth. And perhaps if you can make up some really horrible stuff, out him. Okay. We may very well erect a statue of you in the middle of our decaying and now very violent capital, Washington, D.C. I think I guess it's a poke at the crime. Some people would make that deal, but they are weaklings and cowards and so bad for the future of our failing nation. I don't think that Mark Meadows is one of them, but who really knows? Make America great again. So, I don't know. So that kind of seems like a little bit of well, what's done is done. I don't know if you can really so much of a threat to Mark Meadows, but just like a, you know, dis undermining whatever this witness has said and told the grand jury, etc., laying that, you know, groundwork to appeal to the audience at large for his public opinion. I don't think these things, like in an actual, like you are on trial, if they pull up a lot of tweets or interviews that he has and they use it as like evidence in the trial, that ultimately things like this will look good. But his focus is, what does that, at the court of a public opinion, what are they saying, what are they thinking? So if someone who's been with me for a minute, who's seen a lot of things, you know, comes out and says the stuff about me, I have to jump ahead of it and say, you know, I have to throw mud on the actual, you know, testimony by telling all these people that essentially it was a good deal and he was coerced into it. So you can't trust a single thing that he says, you know? So, I'm sure that a lot of people agree with that, you know, see him saying those things. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, he had no other kind of choice, etc. But I think if he was the kind of man who would listen to good, competent lawyers, he probably would just chill and let the legal system work some stuff out. And not that in a lot of cases that he'll get a fair shot, but this isn't I know a great way to operate with this stuff. So more Trump troubles, more Trump troubles. Anyway, moving on. I want to talk about this um dating thing where there was a list. My sister brought up this list to me yesterday. They talked about it on the Breakfast Club about different places to not go on a first date. And I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty interesting. So I don't get it for I don't understand a lot of the list, but I get some of them, I guess. So I want to go through it and you guys can let me know what you think. And there was a rapper who I guess had this and they talked about this on the Breakfast Club. And so now this is kind of a big topic of conversation. My sister was going to do like a skit about it. You know, she's on TikTok. You guys can follow her, Katrina. But when she puts that out there. But here's the list. Uh 28 places women refuse to go on a first date. Number 1 is the Cheesecake Factory. And I kind of don't get it. There's not a lot of cheesecake factories around. There's one in Novi, and that's still a bit of a hike. You know, I don't haven't been there a lot of times. I think they have, they have a big menu. Maybe it's a little too big, but it's fine. I think it would be fine to go on a first date. So I'm a little puzzled the Cheesecake Factory sits there. Um Applebee's, um, you know, I you know, I don't think that's terrible, I guess. Chili's, I definitely wouldn't want to go to Chipotle as a first date. I think fast casual and fast food are out of the running. That's not a place I think that you should be like, hey, I want to take you. And a lot of this is also depending on how deeply you know the person, how much of an impression that you're trying to make. And I guess that's maybe a lot of people are making these suggestions don't want someone to not invest a lot of money in the first date. And I know it just kind of depends. You got to fill out that energy, and see how much you're willing to impress that particular woman. The movies is a typical first date for a lot of people. So I don't get that. Now I wouldn't love, I guess, a first going to the movies as a first date. I don't go to the movies a lot of times because I'd rather like, stay home and write or something. But if you're quiet most of the time because you're obviously watching the film, and I mean, I know sometimes you guys take the girl to the scary movie and they want them to, like, I don't know, cuddle them or something in terror, I guess. But I I wouldn't be too keen on the going to the movies for a first date. I definitely wouldn't mind. Um, it depends on the movie. Like if someone you like is like, hey, I want to see this movie. I want to take you to the movie. And it's a movie that you really, really want to see. Like my dad got into Star Trek because my mom was really into Star Trek. So, that was his way in. She was giving him a bit of a hard time. So, I don't know if that was the first date. I think maybe it was the second date. Um, so it would just really depend on the movie. Your House is the next one, and I don't think that would be a cool first date, because uh I wouldn't want someone to, I guess, have a, you know how well do you know that person? And what kind of impression are you giving, like, into the night and stuff. So, but some people like, hey, I want to cook you something, and I can kind of get that. But if I'm just getting to know someone, I definitely wouldn't want to first stop be there over their house. um any fast food chain, yeah, that one's out. Don't want to do that. Buffalo Wild Wings is a um not a good. I don't even love going there at all, but Wingstop is a that's another fast casual. Red Lobster is, I don't know, not terrible, not terrible. There's definitely better seafood places you could go, better restaurants you could go with better, food, but some people love them never ending shrimp. A buffet, um, I can I can get that cuz you don't want to gorge yourself or anything you know on a first date or you shouldn't do that anyway, but yeah, I can get buffet. IHOP, I don't like going to IHOP at all. Really, you know, I don't I'm not a big go out for breakfast kind of person. And I assume you're not going out for the breakfast dates like that. And I would rather eat something else than IHOP. So Denny's is much better than IHOP in my opinion, but I wouldn't want to go there for a first date probably. The gym, um, that's a weird one. I get that. Going to church, for me, you better be willing to go to church, not for a date. If you're going to church, you're going for the Lord. We're going for the Lord. But you're not gonna get too far if you don't go to church with me. We're not gonna make go too far if I don't know that that's a priority in your life, and my family goes to my church and church members and so on, and I believe in dating to marry, not to just kind of hang out and stuff. So, um, going to church wouldn't be like I don't know, if I was interested in someone, um, the church would be a very early stop, and I would assume by the time I don't know we maybe got to either to dating that maybe you have visited or something before. So but first date, not the church. Starbucks. I don't even like coffee. Coffee dates. I've been I can understand people going on the coffee dates. Like I was at the gym one night. This is when I was like in a competition and stuff, and I was like going to like Lifetime Fitness, and I was there like all the time. It was kind of like a bit of an unhealthy obsession. I was trying to win the money, but but I was there like nonstop working out, and I was there was a an Arab guy who was, noticed me and we were talking a little bit. And so he seemed impressed by my stamina and asked me out for coffee. And I was just kind of like, I don't like coffee. I kind of left it at that. I didn't want to go out, but but I can understand how, situations like that kind of evolve into, hey, we should get coffee to kind of feel each other out, so I don't think that's a terrible, you know first date. That obviously seems more casual, unless um if you take a woman out on like a big like fanciful dinner, that's like some investment. You're trying to impress that girl, and I can understand what every woman feeling like they're at that particular level, but people, guys don't always have to break their bank if they aren't there kind of feeling that they're there in that moment, because there are girls who go out just to get that meal. So uh what else is there? Ice cream dates. I wouldn't like that. Family functions, that's weird for a first date. um I think it's good to bring your, you know person around your family particularly early. I don't understand like people who are like, "Oh, let me introduce you to my family," when you're like already engaged. That's very late in the game. But first date, that's weird. Movie night, um, you know, you'd have to be like a big movie buff to really appreciate that. That wouldn't be my thing. Somewhere that requires a long drive. Um, I agree with that. Bowling depends what kind of people you are. I wouldn't love. I'm not a great bowler. And I feel very high pressure to win, but I don't perform particularly well in that area. So I I, I wouldn't enjoy that too much. So you gotta know something about the person you're seeking. Um, Nightclubs definitely would not go. Um, a hookah bar definitely would not go. Um, a bar just for drinks definitely would not go. Um, Waffle House. I like Waffle House. You know, definitely not first date material. Definitely not. In sports events. Um would depend on the girl. That wouldn't I don't like sports like that, so that definitely would not appeal to me. But depends because it could be like, oh, you go to bite after eat or etc. So that's the list. That's the list. I think some of these are definitely interesting. But I think I I guess it's some of the restaurants like Olive Garden or Cheesecake Factory saying like definitely don't take me there. But I guess some people's comments were like, "Oh, there's more interesting places to take someone." And that could be valid, but if they're a nice guy and they want to take you out for a meal and they're not ready to spend hundreds of dollars, hundreds on you or whatever, you're getting to know each other. Is it really that terrible if they take you to Olive Garden? Is it really that awful? So, interesting list. Looking at the comments for a minute, but I just thought it was interesting. I guess what surprised me the most was the Cheesecake Factory because I mean the Cheesecake Factory isn't fancy or anything, but they got good food and it seems something different to me because it's again the closest one to me is like an hour away basically. So I've only had it like I can um count on two hands maybe the amount of times that I've gone. Um I don't know. Someone have to explain that to me. But I guess people just you know, I don't know if it's played out because of what's the movie, the show with the geeks, uh, Big Bang Theory or what? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, had some fun. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Cost of stream, cost to run my website, all that stuff. If you like what I do here, please I think I already said that. But go to the website. You guys can see those links right in the description. Check out different merch available at the website. We got, some pro life stuff. We got mugs. We got, um, if you're still on the Trump train, we got this one like the Trump make crack whack again, which is funny because I made this shirt and didn't have anything to do with Hunter Biden or the crack that was found at the White House, but um it's just funny. It was about something else, Joe Biden and their administration and giving crack pipes to people. But check out different books and stuff that I have. You guys go to blacktnews.com at the merchandise page. There's a banner taking my book website. So if you're interested in any of the stuff that I write and you'd like to read about it, please go to blacktnews.com and find all that stuff, or just search my name on Amazon. By the way, I just want to give a shout out and thank you to people who comment on my post and particularly all my posts wherever I put them on Twitter, on Facebook, or, on YouTube. That's where there's like the most traction usually when I post something. And so I posted the other day about a conversation we had about abortion on TikTok, and someone said that having abortion was like biologically the same as like brushing your hair or getting a massage, and it's just cells. And so people, I didn't have anyone who defended that position of that person. And there are people who are pro-choice on there and who, agreed with my assessment pretty much, like don't minimize it that much. And some of you shared some intense pain from miscarriages and other things like that. And I imagine that's, well, one, I'm sorry for your losses. And um I can't imagine that that's an easy thing to go through at all. My sister had like a pregnancy scare with her last baby, and that was just awful, just to, in case something happened. But to actually have like a still, people were talking about stillborn babies they had, and different miscarriages that they had, ectopic pregnancies. And um my heart just goes out to you. And I thank you guys for helping um the issue, because I mentioned that even pro-choice people will, they may not like it, but one of the reasons they're even pro-choice is because they know it's such a hard thing, and they don't want to give too much hassle to the women who feel like they really need one, because they don't want to make them feel too bad about it, because there's value in that life. So people expressing their grief about it helps to just elevate the conversation, that this is more than just a clump of cells. It's more than just I don't know, dead skin cells, or whatever kind of crazy stuff that people want to equate it to. So I appreciate it. And I think I'm going to actually make a separate video and share some of those comments, because I think they're worth sharing. So I just wanted to, like, publicly on here just say thank you for um expressing how you feel and sharing. And I I appreciate it. Hope other people appreciate it and learn something. And so I want to continue elevating that conversation. So, and it's not just like dweebs on TikTok, by the way. Destiny, he had a debate on the Whatever podcast with Trent Horn, who's a Catholic, into Catholic apologetics and stuff. And he did such a great job, much better than the Lila Rose, Kristen Hawking debate they had with Destiny. And Destiny at one point said that an abortion, or losing a child, having an abortion, or losing a child that early, or something before they have a conscious experience, is somewhere along the lines of not making the right connection on Craigslist. Like, oh, maybe that person could have been your boyfriend, but he didn't click on the link or something, and you guys could have had a life, but you didn't have a life. And to that kind of point, I think Trent like pushed it a little bit, and then I think he just kind of let it go, like, okay, like, one of those, the audience isn't gonna agree with that. Like, sometimes you just kind of let their morals and ideas just kind of hang, so everyone else listening can digest it and say, if that's where your opinion leads, I don't like this worldview, and maybe this person over here has a point. And that happened a few times. But I always meant to kind of reply to that part. I just hadn't gone back and like cut it out. But I'll have to, if I make this video, I'll have to like put that in there, because that sentiment that Destiny had is some, like, there's no value in it if they don't have some kind of conscious experience. It's just deleting some cells or something like that. But it's not, um it's a life with potential. And people who are carrying their children, whether they're wanted or not wanted, because they're erasing the value of them, period. So it doesn't matter if someone wants them to have an abortion or someone wants to carry the child. They're saying that there's really no value or whatever to them biologically. And to just think that if a woman had a miscarriage at, like, I don't know, 15 weeks or something, that's the equivalent of not meeting a person who maybe you could have dated on Craigslist. You're losing your child versus someone who is a stranger who you've never connected with. And so that is just so skewed. So I wanted to point that out because I'm sure even pro-choice people be like, no, that's not the same. That's not the same. So again, thank you for sharing your stories and being vulnerable enough to share your pain. So anyway, thank you guys. Thank you for being part of the conversation, and I will see you all tomorrow.